Hi everyone, welcome back. It's early off season, but I'd really prefer to get everything done before it gets cold out. By the way, it's already cold out. But thank you all so much for watching. I greatly appreciate it. Please consider subscribing if you haven't already, and help me grow this thing up a little bit more, and maybe Google will eventually buy me a tire. That would be great. Any little bit helps. Like I said, I'm not asking you all to buy anything. I'm not asking for memberships. I'm not asking for any of that little stuff. Just maybe give me a watch and enjoy the show and go along on the journey with me. And if you know anybody who might be interested in whatever I do here, short track racing, amateur mechanicery and fabrication and engineering and professional failure, send them my way. But either way, we're going to get back to work on the race car and whatever else I find along the way, to be fair. And like I said, working on race cars in a garage like this is, well, let's be fair, nicer than being outdoors, but it's difficult in the wintertime. I go through a lot of propane to keep myself warm in here all year long. And we're already at that point where I hate it. I've lived in New England my entire life, and I hate the cold. I know. Oh, well, you could move somewhere else. Yeah, easier said than done. So, we're going to get back to work on the car, and we're going to continue on the process of fixing everything we didn't like from the test session and any time else. We're going to try to get the motor probably winterized. I'm going to make a few phone calls and see if we can actually do whatever we got to do to get that thing right. I also want to get the rear end that we'd put together a couple videos ago. If I remember, I'll put it in the corner. Dig that out of that corner over there, because I got everything to put it together now, except for oil, which I can get at any time. And I'd love to get that in here and mock that up. I'd also like to finish some of the crush panels on the inside of the car, which I'll show you in a second, because when I kicked the roof over this way so that it would actually kind of cover the side of the tire, much like it did to this side. See, it's about the same. Before, it was sticking way out because I'd had it tweaked over to the left a little too far. Now I got it straight. Now I got her kind of held in place. I'm gonna have to paint this. That's okay. But I gotta fix the rear deck panel. I gotta add some crush paneling over there, and I have to cut this one down so that it will fit in there, which would be nice. So first things first, I'd really like to have this thing kind of not in my way and falling down so that I can get underneath and work on the rear end. So I think we're just gonna get straight into it, start riveting this back panel on and fixing the crush panels. Not so bad, I guess. You know, we got tape for a reason. Any little gap that's going to be in here, like these spots here, where I can actually, you know, get digits down into the gaps here. I'm just taping those. Because if I ran a completely flush crush panel to the edges and I'd run into people, the body will not flex and it'll just crumple that whole thing in and probably hold the body in. Oh yeah, I forgot I gotta fix on these because when it kicked it over, it pulled this panel that way and popped a few rivets. Didn't hurt the chassis. The chassis is not what moved. It was the panel getting moved over. A couple of these holes I made are a little bigger than I wanted, but that's what they make tape for, like I said. And when they went to relieve the chassis, some of the heat from the torch came up and melted all that cheap tape that I used from Dollar General. So let's just not use that anymore. We'll just stick with the aluminum tape and just spray paint over it like you don't even know it's there. So that'll be good to go. Well, guys, I got all my tools and everything everywhere, just like normal. But check it out. A little strip of paint, that'll dry, and it won't be so glossy. I taped it down and painted it. Taped down the corner, painted it. Taped down that edge, painted it. Taped around that, painted it. Got everything riveted back in. Got the crush panels back in. She's pretty good to go, aside from a nice detail and wipe down of the interior because, well, you know, dusty shops tend to get the thing dirty, and I'm trying to keep this thing as nice as I can, even though it's a race car. We know it's not going to be the most perfect thing in the world, but it is what it is. So I'll probably try to wipe some of that residue off from the tape falling off of it and stuff, but hopefully, fingers crossed, I never have to do this again. And as I got home late from work today, because that's just how it is this time of year, I am out of time for the day, so I'm going to go inside and try to indulge in some iRacing and relaxation, which definitely don't coincide because I'm competitive, but we'll see if we can have some fun. And I will come back out hopefully tomorrow, but you never know. So it's the next day, and our agenda has changed. The motor's coming out. We had been kind of wishy-washy on, oh, are they going to, confirm it in the rule book and blah, blah, blah. Well, after speaking to a couple fellow competitors and them confirming that this will be something in the future, and it's also something that I've really been kind of stumping for quite a while, especially since the cost of everything has gone through the roof. Because to anybody not familiar with our situation up here in Connecticut, for the longest time, crate motor divisions, if you run like a 602 like I got, you were not allowed to do anything to them. You weren't allowed to rebuild them. You weren't allowed to I don't even think you could fix them. Like if you blew a head gasket, you were buying a new engine. It's just the way it was, and I didn't agree with it at any point, but now it's gotten to the point where the motors are like twice as much as when the rules were instituted, and they're saying, look, it's really stupid of us to not allow you guys to rebuild these engines because the cost is cheaper than the new engines. So instead of us making you front that cost, we're going to allow you to rebuild it. And that's something that I've wanted for years now, and they're all finally starting to come around. So this motor is coming out, and it's going up to the engine shop, hopefully in the next couple days. I got to get it in line because the Speedway has one shop that does all their crate motors, and they have crate motors in 3 divisions. So counting every single car, that could be 100+ engines. So it's like, I don't think they're all going to need to be done, but I really do need to get it out, up there, and in line so that I even have a hope of it being done before opening day. So let's get to stripping. Pulling the engine. right, folks. Aside from the absolutely blown out nature of the shop, we got it back out. And in good time, too, because I'll show you. Well, you know what? It's good because I didn't get to paint all this stuff. I just kind of chucked it together because paint is kind of ancillary in some cases, but I can finally get back in there and clean that up. I found and this usually doesn't happen to me, but this time it did. Not very happy with how the distributor gear looks. I'm going to have to look into why it's wearing out, but it's still in the middle of the tooth. So that's not so great. But since the motor is going to get refreshed, I'll just add that to the list of things to take a look at. I'm sure he's going to anyway. And he's going to have to yank it all apart and hot tank it. So that's added to the list. I want him to check all the other stuff like timing chain and overall condition and what can be used and reused, essentially. But I'm not really sure what the rules allow for, because they have to be very comparable to a new one. So I'm sure you're not going to see a big difference in horsepower, but I just want it to be better than it currently is, because if you saw a previous episode, I actually did some testing on this engine, and we figured out that we could do a redneck valve lap to it, which basically included me pumping air into the cylinders, pulling the valve springs off, pouring Marvel Mystery Oil into the cylinders, and just spinning them spinning the valves while lubricating it with Marvel Mystery Oil to either clean the carbon off of them or reseat them a little bit. And we were able to get, we had 7 of 8 cylinders that weren't really sealing very well, and we got it down to 4. But the 4 were these two. If you know a small block Chevy, these 2 exhaust ports are always kind of problematic. So I think these exhaust ports on both sides are burnt. I think the valves are burnt, especially because when you go into the corner, it pops and spits and farts like it's got an exhaust leak, but it doesn't have an exhaust leak. So I'm kind of guessing that GM didn't really do a great job of doing valve jobs to these things. So now we'll have a professional do it instead of some guy on an assembly line who likely wasn't union labor. Let's just put it that way. So I'll finish stripping this thing down, and I'll probably load it up in the truck tomorrow, which I think is Thursday. And then hopefully by Friday, maybe if I can get a hold of them, I'll have this thing dropped off at the shop. And I need more oil dry, because apparently this car, for whatever reason, and I don't know what it is, this car is far more difficult to put an engine in than my old car was that's outside, which obviously you can't see because every ounce of heat just left this garage. So now I have to try to reheat it again. But that car out there, that thing, I could just throw an engine at it and it would go in. This thing, I don't know what the deal is, but I have to dip and angle and jack and then move and tweak, and it just does not accept engines. And once you get it in there, you might as well just leave it because it's never coming back out. So that was an absolute fight, and it knocked the damn plug out of the transmission and everything leaked out on the floor. But this transmission's getting pulled apart anyway, because I'm thinking that the main shaft is bent in it, or the output shaft, I should say. Not really sure, but you can't get the slip yoke on past a certain point. So I want to take a look at that. But I'll finish stripping this thing down, get the rest of the stuff off so that we can get out of here. But as it's pretty late and we're going to hit a record low tonight. Yes, we're going to hit 30 degrees again. It feels like it never left. It really doesn't. It feels like the cold never left. It feels like 85 degrees every single day was a fever dream, no pun intended. But now we're right back to cold. Welcome to New England. Either way, I'm sick of the cold because I've always hated it, and yet I've been not smart enough to move away. So I'm going to go inside, tackle that thing tomorrow, hopefully get it to the engine shop, like I mentioned, by the end of the week. We'll see what happens. Next day, we're going to finish pulling all the rest of the stuff off the motor. I think I got a pulley. I got the bell housing, clutch, stuff like that. Probably the water neck. Just whatever doesn't need to go to the machine shop is what we're going to pull off of it. And then I'm just going to stuff it in the bed of the truck because I keep calling the shop and they're so busy they can't answer. So I'm like, well, I don't know when to bring it, and you're never answering the phone, and the voicemail box is full. So I'm like, I guess I'll just go drive it up there, and if he doesn't have room for it, I guess I'll drive it back home with a date when I should bring it up. So this will go in the truck, and I'll probably take the truck to work tomorrow and take a really long drive up to where the shop is, because maybe I'll make it there before they close. But first things first, we'll get that thing out, and if all else fails, I'll bring it next week. But time to tear that apart now. Not really weather protected, but it is in there, and it's like triple belted in. I got this giant belt that I found on the side of the highway, and this one that someone gave to me, and then I put one because this tailgate has a tendency to open for no good reason. I've got a nose one here going straight to the bed tie down. That way, if the bed decides it wants to fall down, hopefully that'll stop it from falling out. But I'm gonna see if I can go stuff this thing in line and hope he has room, and then it's a waiting game. Otherwise, I'm going to need to make some walking room in here because stuff's in the way. This stuff needs to find a place. It's ridiculous. It's just like when I took the other car apart to build this thing. The mess that I created doing that is right back where it was. And I'm pretty sick of it at this point. Because, to be fair, you got to understand my frustration. This is a brand new car, and I shouldn't have had the issues I had, and I ended up having them, and then I had to rebuild the entire thing all over again. And now, we're at the end of the season, where everything has to come back apart again to get refreshed. It's just poor timing, that's all. And poor maintenance on my part, I suppose. But it's a good opportunity for me to get this thing finished painted, and that'll be on the list, I'm sure. I don't want rusty garbage, and I would really like this thing to be nice and clean. So we'll wipe it down, and we'll throw a couple coats of paint on her, and we'll get to work on the rear. We'll rebuild the transmission. All that stuff is to come. In what order, I'm not really sure. So I'll get this place cleaned up and come back to you when I do. I'm going to drain this thing out. If you've watched the channel long enough, you've seen me pull plenty of transmissions apart, so I'll probably not even bother putting this even the time lapse. But we're going to drain this out. I built this transmission myself in... I want to say, let's see, I went to Stafford for the first time in 2020, actually. So I probably would have built this transmission for that because the 150 rule, not sure if that's still a thing, but we'll check. But it doesn't matter because I'm going to use 150s exclusively for when I go back up there. That's a bit wiggly. I'm going to have to, when I put the motor back in the car, I'll have to check to see if the bell housing needs, like, offset dowels to hold it on. Because I'm getting a little bit of wear on the pilot bushing. As you can see by the end of this thing, I'm just kind of wiping it off. And I'm thinking and it's wiggly, too. It's pretty wiggly. I'll probably check that offset dowel pin if I need it or not. But this will be a good tell of if I did anything right here. You can see I've used this transmission a bunch. It's kind of cakey and oily and a lot of oily. So to go back through after racing it a bunch and tear it down and take a look at it from the work that I did is going to tell me quite a bit on how well I did and what the longevity of my work is. So I'll tear that thing down. I'll get it draining for now. We'll see if it drains out entirely by the end of the night. All right, I got her draining, and the oil looks like it's got a bit of a goldish tinge to it, which tells me probably have some synchros that are either worn in or worn out. So there's either way there. So let's get this thing tipped up a bit. I found some other things that you might find interesting. Oh, good, I did put the magnet in. I was worried about that. I know some people don't put the magnet back in the bottom, and I'm like, well, I'd really like that to be there to catch anything floating around. Oh, yeah, I'm seeing synchro material kind of, you can see the gold flecks in there. There's your synchro material. What I did find was kind of weird. I found like rust pitting on this gear here. And, oh, why are you moving that much? Oh boy. All right, so we're gonna have to dig back further into this because that is not supposed to be that far out. There's a lot of our synchro material probably. And I'll have to look in the other one, see if there's a washer or something that I'm missing there, which in all likelihood might be happening. Yeah, there's a lot of play here. Okay, so there's definite issues in this transmission. So we're going to have to pull this back apart completely. And once she drains out, obviously. Now, hopefully, fingers crossed, I found it before it became a problem. But we're going to have to let her drain out all the way because doing this is a dirty, dirty job. And I'm going to treat this thing as nicely as I possibly can. Luckily, I have a rather large, for a hobbyist, a rather large assortment of parts. I've got this whole shelf is all transmission parts. Rebuild kit, I think I got like one left. I got spare gears and different other accessory parts. Tail housing, main housing, although I think an ear is cracked. I got some shifters. I got main shafts and I got cluster shafts as well. And then over on another shelf, I've got other parts like broken gears. I've got other gears as well down here. So hopefully I'll have enough to fix this, and I'll have to take a peek inside one of my other transmissions that I rebuilt to see if I'm missing a part that seems pretty vital. Now I'm wondering why there's so much slack in that thing. And I guarantee you I missed a washer or something somewhere where I really needed to have that in there for spacing. And I'm just glad it didn't come apart. So, yeah, let's pull that apart tomorrow, though, because we're already out of time. All right, guys, it's the next day, and I got her blown apart, and I think my suspicions were correct. If you listened or watched a few videos ago, I had suspicions that the tail shaft on the transmission was bent, like it was tweaked. And I have another main shaft here. Tail shaft, main shaft, I don't know what the heck you call them. One of these that holds all the gears. You can take the slip joint, or yoke, or whatever the hell you want to call it, and push this all the way until it stops on the teeth, right? This one came out of the transmission. I can actually visibly see it's a little bit bent here. Take it. See how it stops? Yeah, that's... And I can visibly look down it. Yeah, that thing is bent. So, for some reason, this got twisted. Maybe I was a little bit aggressive shifting it at Thompson. I don't know. But this is bent. We're going to replace it. But first, I got another gear. I think it'll work. If it doesn't measure out properly, I'll just reuse it. Because it's first gear, and it's got a little bit of rust pitting from before, and I'm sure it's okay, but at this point, if I can replace it with something nicer, I will. If it's not quite right, then I'll put it back, whatever. I have to look and see where one of these is missing a shim, because this should not be moving around this much. I'm thinking it's probably in between. Yeah, I think there's a shim missing between the output bearing and I think that's reverse. Yeah, I think there's something missing there, so I'm going to have to go take a look. But I also got the input bearing off, and this thing feels like mint. It feels like as smooth as glass. This one, though, that does not feel good. And I'm I'm certain it's because we probably wore it out forgetting something to put it back in there. I'll hot tank all, well, not hot tank, but I'll parts clean at least these whole thing up, swap some gears, throw it back together with a brand new fresh rebuild kit. Okay, so I'm digging into this thing a little bit deeper. I got all the parts cleaned and I'm just kind of taking gaskets off and trying to do reassembly, but I pulled the tail bearing off, right? And I'm looking at the shaft here and I'm like, that don't look great, because I'm looking at this one and that's just kind of wear. This is like 2 gouges in it and it's burned and the bearing feels like crap. And then I look inside and I'm like, that's discolored. That was spun. Then I look here and it's cracked right here at the end of my finger. You can see that? That's cracked all the way around. Yeah, you can see it better there. There's no spring for the washer either. And this washer is chewed. And I don't even know what this is. But that's like it was over the end of the bearing like that. Like it fits over it. I'm like, what is going on here? I don't remember putting this together that way, but hey, I must have. So we're just kind of in process at the moment. Yeah, I'm kind of real glad I pulled this apart because I felt a vibration, didn't like it. I'm going to see if this fits. I'm probably going to have to put the old one back on because, oh, you know what? That's the reverse gear. Anyway, yeah, definitely going to have to put that one back on. So, either way, I got this, like I said, might be a 4-speed. This might not fit here. We'll play with it. But I just figured I'd jump back in. Like I said, I'm not putting you on time lapse for another transmission. You've seen me do it like 3 times. I'm just tearing this one apart, but I figured that would be fun to show you. Another update. It's only been about, I don't know, 3 seconds since my last update, but I pulled off this thing. Forget what you call it. You know, it sits here on these gears here, and it's usually retained by a clip right here. Well, this one wasn't retained by a clip, and that sucks because I don't know if I got a replacement for that or if I'm going to have to take and buff the now burn marks out of it because that's worn down. That sucks. I mean, I got this one, but it don't look great. And I might be able to clean it up. We'll see. I'll check that one out. I don't really know. But, yeah, we're finding a lot of stuff that shouldn't be the way it is because I think what happened is this clip broke that was holding this thing on, and I think everything just kind of ate itself because of that. So, luckily, these kits come with clips underneath all the stuff in there. So, replacement continues. So here she is together. You've seen me do transmissions. Like I said, everything works just as it should. Definitely feels a lot better already. Draining some oil out of the cover because I forgot to wash that. Maybe I'll get that done at a later date. My problem right now is something I've never seen before. Transmission guys will probably be like, yep, seen that one before. But personally, I haven't because this is a shifter mounting holes on the tail shaft of this Saginaw. And I thought that they were supposed to be blind. Like they don't go into the housing. But 2 of them do. This one does. Which you can actually see some blue RTV in there. Maybe if I'm not washing it out completely. And that one does too. This one doesn't. This one actually is looking like it's blind, but... Or is it not blind? I don't remember. Whatever. Doesn't go through the housing. That one doesn't. These 2, for some reason, do. And I remember this housing leaking, and my solution was I just took a small bolt with some copper washer, and I just jabbed it in there and, like, hoped for the best. I think we're going to maybe we'll keep the copper washer. But I'm just going to RTV the hole and just jam a nut or a bolt into it just to kind of take up the distance and hopefully keep stuff out of it at the same time, because I don't use these holes anyway. So yeah, that's leak prevention, but man, I've never seen that before. There's your leak mitigation. 2 with whatever RTV I had that I grabbed first. So there you go. Also, I think I mentioned this when I had that video where I rebuilt transmissions that you've seen a million times if you're a longtime subscriber of my channel. I think these are like, what are they, 7/8? Yeah, these are 7/8 freeze plugs. You can get them on eBay. They're pretty cheap. If you want to get a speedometer hole just kind of cleared off and not have to deal with like leaving the speedometer thing in it and like leaving this little bolt on here and holding it on and having to goop the heck out of it and Loctite this bolt because everything falls out. 7/8 freeze plug. That'll take care of that. Oh, there's my glasses. Probably should have been wearing them the whole time. Either way, I do have good news about the engine. Remember I was saying that I was going to be taking that thing to the engine shop because I hadn't heard from him and he, was so busy he couldn't actually answer his phone, which is a good thing. I got hold of him today and he said, bring it up anytime. I'm like, okay, well, I got a day off Monday. I'll come bring it up on Monday. No problem. And he told me how much it was going to be. Not really too surprised by how much it was. And it's definitely less than the cost of a new motor by a considerable amount. So I'll probably just end up getting the whole thing refreshed just because I don't want anything weird to happen like in this thing. This transmission, I was going to run it. But since the tail shaft was apparently twisted, which by the way, I have taken another look at it and seen, yeah, it's twisted. So it's going to go right here into the parts, actually no, scrap bucket, and be sent away somewhere so nobody else could ever be hurt by it. So I will be bringing the engine to get refreshed. It won't be in this video, but that is going to be going down the river just to get fixed up. So we still have a lot to do, and I'm not really sure what else I'm going to do next in this video, but I still got at least one more day to work on it. But tonight, I really run out of time. Like I said, work a full-time job, have a family, try to squeeze in your time whenever you can. And it's like, well, that's a lot more difficult, than you think. But at least I get some time to come out here, which is cool. And get stuff like this done, which is nice because now, I got to be honest with you, we averted disaster with this thing because I'm not an expert by any stretch of the imagination, as evidenced by that. But we were probably, I don't know if I mentioned it in the video, I probably already did, but I think we were at least less than a feature race away from complete disaster. That thing with the cracked bearing race and the heat checking and score marks in it and all sorts of bad stuff. I mean, that thing was this close to coming apart. And if that tail bearing, I guess, came apart, we were hosed. That would have probably launched not only the transmission, maybe the drive shaft, maybe would have hurt the rear end all the way down the line. So either way, I'm going to go clean my camera yet again because you can see the streaking marks in the light. But I will probably see you again tomorrow. Well, it's the next day and things have already gone awry. I was painting the transmission because I had a can of Sail Blue hanging around and I'm like, well, I don't have any use for that because I don't have anything that's Sail Blue anymore. The roof on this car, if you ever watched the video where I said goodbye to my old chassis, which hopefully I'll remember to put up in the corner, the top, like the roof and like the hood and stuff was like Sail Blue. It was like that color. And I figured a transmission in that color would be nice. I'm trying to save on my black paint, but I looked on the shelf and I'm like, oh, what do I got? And I found the blue and I'm like, well, that would look cool. And then I literally did a sixth of it and the can just clogged. Just to the point where I'm like, I don't even want to deal with it. So I'll just let this dry and just, I don't know, put some other color on it. I probably got some red for the fuel cell. I should probably paint, you know what I should do? Thinking about it now, I should paint this half red and then paint the top white, make it America colored, because I got all that. Maybe that would work. What a pile of crap. Honestly, I had blue, ran out of blue. I had red, the red clogged up too. I had white, that was unused. However, my idiot folly was non-name brand paint. Guys, if you're going to use paint, just use an actual, I don't know, name brand. Even this stuff, when it was new, was actually pretty good. But this, yeah, it's not worth the $3. Actually, I'm really cheap. Let's put that back on the shelf here. So now that this wet pile of, well, it's not going to rust anymore, I guess. Wet pile of used paint can just sit there on the floor until it dries and I can find a place for it. I also have to, when it finally dries in about 3 weeks, write that it doesn't have oil in it either. So we'll have to do that. I'll have to write it on the board. I'll just say Texas because it looks like, no, even that's an insult to Texas, and I don't even like the place. Sorry, Texans, but you should know who you are. I'll put it up on the board so I don't forget, but I'm going to maybe take my attention and turn it elsewhere because there's a mystery in the wiring that I really would like to tackle. So I got the door open to try to vent some of this fumage out of here because I hate working under fumes and I'm too old for this stuff. And, ooh, hey, nice looking up. Pink Starburst. By the way, this is the best one, and if you don't think so, you're just wrong. Because I know people who think that, red is acceptable too. You can think red is, that's fine. But these are definitely the best, and if you think yellow or orange are, you're boring. And you probably think that liver is a delicacy. So I'm going to enjoy this while I go dig through this to find the electrical tools that I need. So we're in the car, clearly. Duh. I want to test if it's the button for the starter that's hanging the starter up when we try to run the car. Because whenever I hit the button on the starter, when it's, time to fire it up, the starter hangs on the engine and just keeps spinning and then disengages a second or two later. Why? I don't know. I changed the solenoid. That wasn't the problem. So I'm going to see if the button is like internally hanging up. And the way I'm going to do that is with this. This is an ancient Radio Shack. See? Radio Shack. Multimeter, however you say it. Do they say altimeter or do they say altimeter? Forget it. But this thing, you can do a lot with it. I bought it when I was a teenager, clearly, because Radio Shack hasn't really existed for probably that long. Also, I bought it thinking, I'll never use that. 20-something years later, I still have it, although the cover broke off almost immediately. Of course. I think I've only ever changed the battery in it once, because it lasts forever. Now, you can check, you can ohm things out. You can check the little arrow with the plus sign. I don't know what that does. AC and DC volts, which it will automatically come up. And it'll tell you M for millivolts. Or actually, it'll be MV for millivolts. Anyway, you can also do a fun little function called continuity, which is fun because it beeps. So, I'm kind of hoping that if I stick this on the back side of the starter, there's one, there's I can't see a thing. I'm going to try to tape it onto the terminals to see if it does anything. And in which case, we'll see if it opens and closes the circuit in the amount of time that I'm on the button. So let me get back to you when I can actually get this thing affixed properly to the button. See, what I'm finding is that this is a little bit more difficult than I thought because I'm not an electrician. If I do it on the ignition switch, that works. But why, if I click both sides of the starter terminal, is it constantly on? But then when I push the button, here's my issue. Nothing happens. Doesn't change. Which is very strange to me. So I'm going to have to figure out why. Because I thought that the circuit was, I forget, open or closed, which one it is. And then you hit the button and open or close. I don't remember terminology when it comes to electronical stuff. Open, closed. Google's going to have to be my friend for a minute. As my amateur mechanicry skills are not that great, I decided to go for the dummy test. So you can see my lights on. Used to be red. It's now yellow because when it came back from the chassis shop, it was gone. So everything's off, and I know none of the open wires are touching anything out there. So let's just see here. That's the solenoid hitting. That's pretty instantaneous if you ask me. So I'm wondering if, for some odd reason, maybe the shim in the starter need to be adjusted a little bit, because maybe that's what's hanging it up, even though in the past it never used to before. Let's just do that for now. Well, that was kind of dumb, so I know I'm probably going to get roasted in the comments for that. And I don't know why. Because I know I'll get out of the car and I'll go to my momentary switch that I used to have in the car, which is not a button. It's just an actual switch that I would just flip up, like, you know, cup cars or, you know, serious race cars have a momentary switch instead of a button. And I used to use that, and then I just put this panel together, and it's been a headache ever since. So I'm going to learn a few things off camera. Meanwhile, I'll get rid of that. But as for this video, to be fair, I've kind of run out of time. I don't really have a heck of a lot more going on, and it's nighttime. I have to get this video done. So otherwise, I don't really have a lot I can really add to this one other than a thank you, because I really need to thank everybody for hanging in there with me and going on this journey with me. And definitely doesn't go the way you plan sometimes, I'll be honest with you, because this thing was supposed to be the biggest, best, neatest, latest, greatest thing, and then we get it out on the racetrack and pile it in the wall. So we don't have any clue still whether or not this thing's going to be good, but I still have faith that it's going to be because, well, it's straight. And if you have a straight race car, you can make any straight race car fast. It's just that I lose confidence in myself, and that's the only reason why it's not fast. So I'll get a bunch of really good people that I already have in my quarter, and we'll put them together and we'll figure it out clearly. But we still have a long way to go with the build process. The rest of the body's got to come off. We have to finish the rear bumper. We got to put the new rear in it. We got to get the engine up to get refreshed, which is going to happen next video. I don't even think you're going to see that. You'll just probably see me going up there and maybe driving home. I don't know. But I appreciate every single one of you that's helped me out along the way as well. Like those of you who share me to Facebook groups or like online or any other way that you do it. Like I said, I greatly appreciate every single bit of you guys helping out. I'm not asking you for no money. I'm just asking for you to maybe be patient with the ads. You know what I mean? We finally reached the point where we get ad revenue and people are like, oh, now I got to watch ads. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's kind of the point. I mean, I wanted this channel to kind of supplement the race team. And at this point, all it's paying for is beer if I drank it, which you wouldn't know by looking. But either way, if you know anybody who'd be interested in this level of failure, send them my way. You know, I do a lot of fabrication and amateur mechanicry and engineering and a lot of screwing up, but that's how we learn, isn't it? We learn by screwing up. And that's how we learn to do things by ourselves, is by trial and error. So again, I appreciate every single one of you. Thank you very much for watching. Until next time. See, guys, I'm not crazy. You're the one who's crazy. Look. Momentary switch. I knew I wasn't crazy.